Hey, good morning. Today is Friday, the 18th day of Sivan, and we continue chapter 6 in Shaar, Yichud, vEmuna. And so we came yesterday with the understanding of the two forces, the two powers that Hashem uses, the attributes of chesed, attributes of gvura, that God uses to make this world work. We have the chesed, the kindness is the giving, the gvura is restricting. And we explained that if you give with no limits, then we will not be able to exist. Everything will be nullified in Hashem's existence. So for that reason, there needs to be the gevura, needs to be the din, the judgment, restriction. And so basically the restriction is really a power of creation also. Because if the restrictive powers is there for us to be able to contain the light, the restrictive powers, they themselves make life. And that we explained it in detail in the last couple of lessons. And we explained that this is the two names of Havaya and Elohim. The name of God, Havaya, the Yud, Kei, Vav, and Hey, represents the power of chesed, the power of giving, the attribute of giving, and creating. Havaya is from the word haveh, which means creating. Yud is a constant, because we need, for us to exist, we need to be constantly created. And then Elohim, the name of God, Elohim, Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem, is the attributes of din, of restriction, confinement, filtering the light, blocking the light, so that we can exist. And this is why Elohim has the numerical value 86. Same numerical value has the word hateva, which means the nature. Because the nature is God in concealment. Everything looks normal, it looks like it's there. We don't see God. God is concealed. The word teva also means like nature, has the meaning also as being when you sunk in the water, in the ocean. In Hebrew is tubu, like tubu b'yamsuf. The word teva means being sunk. That means that also here the same idea that godliness is concealed as something is underwater, you don't see it. So that we explained these two forces, and now the Alter Rebbe comes to teach us, and it tells us that really these two forces work together, as we learned yesterday, that the concealment here is not a concealment of blocking the light, but it is a concealment in order to create light, to allow us to be able to see the light. And when you see these two forces working together, you must come to a conclusion that these two forces really are coming from one higher source that combines them both. The source of Hashem, the very essence of Hashem, the very essence of God, that enables them both to work together. What does that mean? Just to use an example. If you have a king, he has different ministers. You have minister of defense, a minister of the finances. So these two ministers, their agenda may be different. The minister of finance, his job is to make sure that there is enough money in the kingdom. The minister of defense needs to spend money, make sure there is a good defense. And their interests may come in conflict. But when they when they sit down together in front of the king, then they realize that there is a higher goal, there's a higher source. Everything is really, it's about the king. So you come to the realization that it's a higher thing. The goal is a higher goal that unites them both together. And the king brings them both together, the side of the restriction and the side of giving. Similar thing is mentioned also in the nature. It says the nature of the fire and the nature of the water are in conflict. So it says, our sages tell us that in doing the plagues, the plague of the hail, so the hail that came down on the Egyptians was a combination of hail and fire together. The Medrash tells us that Michael is the Sar Shel Ma'im, the angel Michael is the angel of the water, the angel Gabriel is the angel of the fire. And they too don't get along usually. They have different agendas. But Hashem comes and makes peace between them. That's what we sing. Says Shalom Bimromav, the one who makes peace above. He makes peace above between the angels. And how does he make peace? When they realize that there is a higher goal. Then the higher goal is revealed, they realize that there is no conflict between them. And that's how the fire and the water was able to come together and bring down the hail with fire. So this is the Alter Rebbe, we come to the understanding and we realize that Hashem is Elohim, that they're both the same. And this is what the Torah tells us, that you should know that Hashem is Elohim. I want to start with this verse. We're going to say before we start the Tanya, we'll just look inside this verse. It says, V'yadat ha'yom in the Torah. Just a minute. Yeah, this is in Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 39. It says, and you shall know this day and consider it in your heart that the Lord, He is God in heaven above and upon the earth below. There is none else. So if you look into the Hebrew, it says, V'yadata hayom v'shevoisei levavecha. You know today, and take it to your heart, Ki Hashem, Hu Elohim. And Hashem, He is God, and the heaven above and on the earth below. So the Alter Rebbe used this verse in the beginning of the Shaar Yichud vEmuna, and he asked, what does it mean? What is the Torah telling us? We should know that God is the only God, there's nothing else underneath. Would anybody think that there's another God underneath? And Alter Rebbe explains, this is what he explained the last few chapters, explaining the whole idea. What is Hashem? What is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, representing God of the attribute of chesed, the attribute of giving, and Elohim, the attribute of restriction. And now what the Torah is telling us, that although we see a world a concealed world, we don't see the truth, but this is what we need to constantly have in our mind, to understand that Hashem, God, the same God is Hu Elohim. Elohim is also a God, and we'll soon explain also what it means, Ein Od. So let's look in Tanya. We'll start with today's Shiur. And so we continue now in chapter 6. Says the Alter Rebbe, V'hinei, Mi'iskalelus amidei zu bezu, nira la'ayin de'iyu ve'garmo yichad she'ein midoi sof. From the mutual inclusion of the attributes, the opposite nature notwithstanding, it is evident that He and His causations, meaning His attributes, are one. Because if you can take two opposites and bring them together, it is because their source is one, and they're one with their source. That is why they can be combined together. And the Rebbe points out here, why do we have to say that? Why can't we just say the two attributes, they just come together, they just find common cause? Just like, for example, we mentioned this example when you mix a combination of discipline and love and kindness. So like a parent, you have to discipline the child, but in the same time, you love the child, and the discipline comes out of love. So do we have to say that they're one? They're completely one, there's nothing else. And the Rebbe says that with any type of combination, when you need to use this attribute or that attribute, you need to use discipline or you need to use love, there is, by nature, you have to, one of them, at any time, the other, when you use love, then the restriction, the severities is weakened, and you have more of the kindness that is revealed, the giving that is revealed. And if you have the giving, then the restriction, the severities is reduced. But here we say, when Hashem's attributes, they both work together, not in a way that one is weakened, but they both work together at any moment with the kindness and with the restrictions, otherwise we wouldn't be existing. And for that, this says Alter Rebbe, that shows that really they are one with their creator, they're one with the essence. And that is why this is what it teaches us, that Hashem Hu Elokim, as we're going to soon see. Says the Alter Rebbe again, Ki me'ach Hashem beyichud gomorim lochein en misyachadois zu bezo klulism izu. Because since they are in complete unity with him, they therefore unite with each other and are comprised of each other. Kamaimar Eliyahu, as the Eliyahu said, we say it every Friday before Shabbos. In the Potach Eliyahu, it says, "Ve'ant hu the kosher loin umiyachad loin v'chulu." And you are he who binds them together. Binds what? The spheres, the attributes. He binds them together and unites them. And apart from you, there is no unity among those attributes above and below, as it continues. The true unity can only be when it's the one above that binds them together. And because they are one with their source, that is why they can be really united as one, both attributes. And now the Alter Rebbe goes back to the verse that we just read. Zeu shekosov v'ashivoisa el levavecha ki Hashem hu Elokim. This then is the meaning of this scriptural phrase, and take it unto your heart that Avaya is Elokim. Pirush, what does that mean? Sheshneim shemes elu em echad mamash. That is, that these two names are actually one. It means although Avaya represents Chesed and revelation, and Elokim represents Tzimtzum and concealment, they are nevertheless truly one. Shegam Shem Elokim ametzamtzem umali me'oyer u'chinas Chesed k'moy Shem Avaya. Because even the name Elokim, which conceals and contracts the light, is a quality of Chesed. That's what we explained yesterday. The concealment is Chesed, just like the name Havaya, because the concealment is something that gives us the ability to understand. Just like when sometimes if you sit in a class and the teacher is teaching such deep stuff that flies right over your head. You're sitting in a class like this, it's going to be torture. You don't understand anything. The teacher is giving depth. It's teaching such things that is way beyond you. So what is it? What does the teacher have to do in order for you to enjoy the class and appreciate? He has to reduce. He has to contract his thoughts and give metaphors, give examples. Don't give everything. Give some. Speak slow, speak with whatever you have to do to reduce that and explain it with examples so that people can understand, and then you enjoy it. And then you see a revelation, then you see light. But if you sit in the class and he's talking about very deep stuff, but for you it's darkness because you don't understand it. So that's what he said. The concealment is really revelation. That's the tzimtzum comes from chesed. Continues the Alter Rebbe. Because the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He, unite with Him in a complete unity. And He and His name are one, because His attributes are His name. Because the attribute correspond to His specific names. vEmuna, and therefore, since this is so, says the Alter Rebbe, that's what the pasuk, the verse continues. Mimele teida. You will consequently, you will know shebashamayim mimal v'la'oretz mitochas einoid, that in heaven above and on the earth below, ein od. What does it mean? Ein od. Nothing exists outside of Hashem. There's no other existence. Pirush, and this means shegam ha'oretz achumris sheniris yesh gomer le'ein koil, that even the material earth, which appears to everyone's eye to be actually existing, the ein ve'efes mamish, is not an utter nothingness. But is it nothingness? We are here. We are here in the physical way. So he says, "Legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu." It is nothing, not an utter nothingness in relation to the Holy One, blessed be He. And that's what Alter Rebbe explains, because we say Elohim is a concealment. But who does it conceal? It conceals only for us, for the ones below. For the one above, there is no concealment. Kishem Elohim eina mailim umetzamtzem ela letachtoni, because the name Elohim obscures and contracts the light and the life force only for the nether creatures, only for the creatures down below. Veloi le'agabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's not for the Holy One, blessed be He. Doesn't conceal it to Him. Me'acha shehu shmoi Elohim echad. Since He and His name, Elohim, are one. What is He saying? When you know, there's in halacha, there is, for example, we mentioned this before, it says when you say something, words of Torah, you have to cover, you have to have a head covering. When you pray, you have to cover your head. So what if you don't have anything to cover? Can you put your hand on top of your head and that can be considered covered? And the answer is no. Why? Because you cannot cover yourself with yourself. If somebody else puts his hand on you, that is considered a cover because it's not you. So that's why you if you cover with a sleeve, that's considered a covering. Not, but with the hand alone is not considered a covering. So the covering you cannot cover from yourself. So the concealment is not for Hashem Himself, because if Elohim is God, It is the essence of Hashem. So that for Hashem is not concealment. And to use another metaphor that we used before, when the teacher is trying to teach students that are not capable to understand the depths of his understanding, what does he do? He uses metaphors. So when the teacher uses a metaphor, tells a little story to a first grader, what is the story? What's in the story? What's in the metaphor? All the depth. What does the child see? The child sees a story. For him, the depth is concealed. But when the teacher tells the story, gives the metaphor, is it concealing the depth to the teacher himself? No. The teacher sees the depth in the metaphor itself. So the concealment of Elohim is only a concealment to us, but it's not a concealment to God. That's what he says here. V'lochein gam ha'oretz mitachas. Gam ha'oretz u'mitachas la'oretz. Ein ein ve'efes mamesh legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, even the earth and that which is below the earth, they are not an utter nothingness in relation to the Holy One, blessed be He. Ve'eino nikrois b'shem klal. They are not called by any name at all. Afilu b'shem oid shu lashon tafel. Not even by the name od, else, which would indicate a subordinate status. What does it mean? Kamaima Rabbeinu Zechonu Levacha Yehuda v'od likra, as in the statement of our sages of blessed memory, Yehuda v'od likra. What does it mean? This is the Alter Rebbe explains the last part of the pasuk. It says, "B'shamayim imal." You should know that Hashem is and the heaven above, the earth below. Ein od, there's nothing else. So he explains the word ein od, is no od. The Rebbe explains the word od means like it's secondary. Like there's the important and there is the secondary thing. What we are saying that ein od is nothing, not even a secondary thing. There's nothing exists at all in everything is completely nullified, completely to Hashem, from Hashem's perspective. And he uses an example, uses a proof to show that the word od, which means something else, is also means secondary, uses from a statement in the Talmud. Talmud talks about over there about when someone marries when you get married, you say "Reyat mekudeshet li," you're hereby consecrated to me. So the Talmud asks if you can use different words. One of the words that can use, that it says, instead of saying Reyat mekudeshet, he said Reyat charufati. You are my charufa. Is that considered the language of marriage or not? So the Talmud says that it is considered, because we find a verse in the Torah. It says "Vehi shifcha necharefet leish." The word necharefet, this is a maid that is married to a man. So necharefet, we see the concept of marriage. Then the Talmud also says ve'od, and another thing we find also in Judea, they use that language, and necharefet is also considered married. And the Talmud then says v'Yehuda ve'od likra. You have a verse. You need an additional thing to say also that in Yehuda, that in Judea you have already a verse. A verse should be the dominant thing. You don't need an extra secondary thing. So here the Alter Rebbe teaches us that this is the word ve'od. When we say means secondary. So when the Torah says ein od, It means that there's nothing else, not even a secondary thing. That means that the world is not even considered a subordinate status. That's what it says. And Siddhartha Rebbe says that when is this, when can you, it brings the example when you would say that there is the primary part and there's the subordinate part, the secondary part. This would be like a body and a soul. But by Hashem, it's not like a body and a soul. And he explains the difference. Body and soul, of course, the soul is the primary thing, and the body is the secondary thing. But still, the soul is secondary to the body is secondary to the soul, because after all, the body doesn't come from the soul. It has its independent existence, except that it's secondary to the soul. But we cannot say the same when we're talking about the entire universe, the world, compared to Hashem. Although in certain things we do compare and we find similarities, God and the world compared to soul and body, but it's not completely. The example is not perfect because body doesn't come from soul, only the soul gives life to the body. But the whole world the whole existence is from Hashem. So that's what Alter Rebbe finishes here. This too is the case with the body, which is subordinate to the soul, and life force within it, for which reason it is referred to as odd. So the odd, that when you say odd means a secondary, subordinate, that we do refer to the body as we see it in the verse. It says in Tehillim, the Psalm, it says, this is the meaning of the verse, I will praise Havaya. Havaya I praise with my life, meaning with my soul, and I will sing to Elokai, Lord, be'odi with my body. Be'odi with my body. And why is that? Because life is derived from the name Havaya. And the Od, which is the body, it's subordinate from the name Eloki. And the difference is, why can't we say the same thing by Hashem? It's like we said, because the soul does not bring the body into existence, something from nothing. But as to the body, to the Holy One, blessed be, who brings everything into existence, something from nothing. Therefore, everything is absolutely nullified in relation to him, just as the light of the sun is absolutely nullified in the sun. So that therefore the metaphor of the sun and the light is a more closer example to understand our existence from Hashem animating the world and everything. So this gives us a whole new understanding when we say these words, and that we have to take it to heart. The fact that whatever we see, when we see darkness, when we see constriction, when we see limitations, we should know that to be able to see beyond. See what's that ultimately everything is from Hashem also. Even the things that we don't see the godliness revealed is also from Hashem. So, Me'ez Hashem, we shall continue Sunday. Thank you for joining, and have a good Shabbos. Any questions?